Welcome to the Combat Rogue Guide for PVE content in patch 5.4. My name is Gruda, and today I will be walking through the main things you'll need to know to play combat, and also some tips that I personally use but maybe outside of the normal. In this guide I'll be going through gearing and stats, talents and glyphs, macros, priority and rotation, add-ons, and then just some general tips that I have for Combat Rogue. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that we'll go through is gearing and stat priority. For combat, your stat priority would start with 7.5% hit, followed by 7.5% expertise. Then haste, I personally like to go between 16 and 18k. That gives me enough energy regeneration to keep up my rotation even while in Blade Flurry. Then we go to mastery, which increases the chance that you would hit with main gulch, which is basically like another auto attack but for 120%. And then we have crit, which just doubles the amount of damage that an ability would do. I personally prefer to go mastery over crit. Other guides I've seen set them about equal. I do prefer mastery. So let's go through actual gemming and reforging. For reforging, I generally will use Shadowcraft or Ask Mr. Robot in order to get me right around those 7.5 marks for hit and expertise respectively. And for gemming, I generally will go with obviously the legendary meta gem for my helmet. For my red sockets, I'll go with Deft Vermilion Onyx. That is an 80 agility, 160 haste. For yellow, I'll go 320 haste with the quick Sun's Radiance. And for green, if I do have a socket bonus that I do want to pick up, like right here on my belt, we have 120 agility. We'll go with a Lightning Wild Jade. That is 160 haste and 160 hit. Now let's take a look at some more specific gearing choices. For our helmet, we have our legendary meta gem, the capacitive Primal Diamond. For cloak, we have Fenyu, Fury of Zwen. That's a legendary cloak. Trinket number 1, you have Assurance of Consequence. That's going to increase the cooldown recovery rate of Sprint, Cloak of Shadows, Evasion, Killing Spree, Shadow Blades, and Adrenaline Rush. For our Tier 16 2-set bonus, when you generate a combo point from Revealing Strike's effect, your next combo point generating ability has its energy reduced by 15, stacks up to 5 times. And our 4-set, Killing Spree deals 10% more damage every time it strikes a target. For our weapons, in your main hand you always want to have a 2.6 speed weapon, meaning pretty much anything but a dagger. And your offhand, you can use anything. I would go with whatever has the highest item level. If you have 2 of the same item level, I would generally go for a 2.6 speed weapon again. I personally like the 2 seismic bores. I am a human, so I have the expertise racial. And also, it just looks cooler with my transmog. And Killing Spree does hit harder if you have a heavy offhand weapon as well. The next thing we're going to be looking at is going to be our talents and glyphs, so we'll just go straight down the list. Level 15 is our stealth tier, and our first choice is Night Stalker. Increases your movement speed while stealth by 20%, and the damage your abilities deal while stealth by 50%. This isn't a terrible choice for combat, but considering we're only going to be using ambush 3 to 5 times per attempt, it's probably not the best. On to Subterfuge, your stealth breaks 3 seconds after dealing or receiving hostile actions, rather than doing so immediately. This is a great talent for PvP, and also a great talent for subtlety in PvE, because you have a higher uptime on your Find Weakness debuff, but this isn't going to be something you're going to want to use for combat. Our last talent, and the most widely accepted as the best talent for combat, is Shadow Focus. Abilities cost 75% less energy while you're stealth. This is great for if you're low on energy, vanishing and getting an ambush off, just to continue your rotation and adding combo points to the boss. This is definitely the best choice for combat. Our next talent choice comes at level 30, and is what I consider to be a utility tier. Our first choice is Deadly Throw. It's a finishing move that slows the target and also interrupts. This isn't a very good talent, but it is possibly useful for fights like Galacrash, General Nazgrim, and Spoils of Pandaria for the second interrupt. Our next talent choice is Nerve Strike. A successful kidney shot or cheap shot reduces the target's damage output and healing output for 6 seconds after the kidney shot or cheap shot fades. The only thing that this could really be useful for is maybe General Nazgrim for the Arc Weavers, Bone Crushers on Galacrass, not very much else. Our third choice is Combat Readiness. It basically, when you get hit by something, you take less damage from it the next time, and it just keeps stacking up to 5 times. This is an okay talent. This whole tier is kind of not the best for raiding. I usually go with Combat Readiness just for an extra cooldown in case for some reason the boss is attacking me, but that should never really happen. Our next talent choice is at level 45, and this is our defensive tier. The first choice is Cheat Death. An attack that would otherwise kill you will instead take you to 10% of your maximum health and reduce damage taken by 85% for 3 seconds, but this effect can only occur once per 90 seconds. Our second choice is Leeching Poison. Any attacks done to a target afflicted with Leeching Poison will heal you for 10% of the damage dealt, and you can shiv for 5% of your health. And our third choice is Elusiveness. Your Feint ability also reduces all damage taken by 30% for 5 seconds. Out of these three, I would say I would always go with Cheat Death for progression rating, because you never know when you might just randomly die, and having an extra life is very valuable. Leeching Poison is good for soloing, such as doing old content, and Elusiveness. A lot of other rogues do take this talent because they want to reduce their damage taken even more, but I believe that 50% damage reduction for AoE should be plenty, and you should never be getting directly attacked by a boss. Our next talent choice is at level 60, and this is our mobility tier. Your first choice is Cloak and Dagger. Your Ambush, Garrote, and Cheap Shot abilities can now be used from 40 yards away and will cause you to appear behind your target. Our second choice is Shadow Step on a 20-second cooldown. Step through the shadows and appear behind your target. Movement speed is increased by 70% for 2 seconds afterwards. And our third choice is Burst of Speed. Increases movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds and removes any movement slowing effects. Does not break stealth. Out of these three, Cloak and Dagger should never be used. It's only used for possibly PvP subtlety. The other two, Shadow Step, that is usually your go-to. It's like a charge ability. It has no stun or anything, but it will get you directly to the target on a 20-second cooldown. And your last talent, Burst of Speed, is very useful for some fights where you need to be constantly moving, or if there are movement impairing effects like Heroic Makarok, or I personally, for Heroic Spoils of Pandaria, I'm the one that opens the box and tricks the box adds to the tank, so I use this to get around. Next we have our level 75 talent. This is our crowd control tier. Our first choice is Prey on the Weak. When you disable an enemy with Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, Gouge, Sap, or Blind, they suffer 10% increased damage from all sources for the duration of the effect. Our next choice is Paralytic Poison. Coats your weapons with a non-lethal poison that lasts for 1 hour. Each strike has a 20% chance of poisoning the enemy for 15 seconds, stacks up to 4 times on a single target, and upon the 4th application the enemy will be stunned for 4 seconds. You can also shiv the enemy to root it for 4 seconds. Our last choice is Dirty Tricks. Your Gouge and Blind no longer have an energy cost and no longer break from damage dealt by your poison or bleed effects. Prey on the Weak is probably not very useful except for ad fights like Galacrass or possibly General Nazgrim, where you can stun an ad and kill it very quickly. Paralytic Poison is usually your go-to. This can be used in conjunction with the Blade Flurry glyph in order to spread it around and stun a whole bunch of ads in succession. And lastly, Dirty Tricks is basically useless. I'm not sure this is even used at all in PvP. It is not a very good talent for raiding at all. Our final talent choice is at level 90, and this is our DPS tier. Your first choice is Shuriken Toss, a ranged attack that deals 48,000 physical damage to an enemy target. If the target is farther than 10 yards away, your auto attacks will be replaced with a ranged shuriken for up to 10 seconds, granting them 30-yard range. Shurikens can be coated in lethal poison. Our second choice is Marked for Death. On a 1-minute cooldown, mark the target, instantly generating 5 combo points on them. If the target dies within 1 minute, Marked for Death's cooldown is reset. And the last choice is Anticipation. When one of your attacks generates a combo point on a target that is already at 5 combo points, you gain an Anticipation charge, up to a maximum of 5. When you perform an offensive finishing move on an enemy, any Anticipation charges are consumed to grant an equal number of combo points on that target. Shuriken Toss would probably never be used in raiding, because you're never going to have a time where you aren't stuck to the boss or some sort of ads. March for Death is okay for proving grounds and possibly on fights that have a large amount of ads that you can just instantly kill and keep resetting the cooldown. But your main talent you're going to go with is Anticipation, because it basically gives you 10 combo points to spam with during your cooldowns. Now we'll talk about glyph choices. Rogues have a small amount of viable glyph options for raiding, so those are the ones we'll be covering in this guide, the rest will be left out. Our first option is Glyph of Blade Flurry. Your attacks have a 30% higher chance of applying non-lethal poisons while Blade Flurry is active. This is good to use with Crippling Poison in order to slow a bunch of ads at one time, or to stun ads in quick succession with Paralytic Poison. This should never be used on single target fights. Next we have Glyph of Cloak of Shadows. While Cloak of Shadows is active, you take 40% less damage. It's basically Shield Wall in a 1 minute or less cooldown, depending on if you have Assurance of Consequence. Our next choice is Glyph of Feint. Increases the duration of your feint by 2 seconds. If you do take the talent Elusiveness, I would highly suggest taking Glyph of Feint in order to prevent yourself from having to spam Feint nearly as often. Our next glyph is our only mandatory glyph. Glyph of Redirect reduces the cooldown of Redirect by 50 seconds, taking it from 60 seconds to 10 seconds. This is amazing for target swaps, and you will definitely need this. Now we have Glyph of Sprint. Increases your movement speed of your sprint ability by an additional 30%, making this as fast as a ground mount instead of just as fast as burst of speed. Next we have Glyph of Ambush. Increases the range of ambush by 5 yards. The only way I could see this really being viable is if you're using burst of speed and for some reason you just have to get into the boss as fast as possible. Like Weakaura, if it's being pulled from one direction and you're coming from the other, maybe this would be useful. Next we have Glyph of Smoke Bomb. Increases the duration of Smoke Bomb by 2 seconds. I would only ever use this glyph if my raid leader or healing leader asked me to, for like Heroic Thok or something like that. Otherwise, they should not be used. On to the minor glyphs. Glyph of Blurred Speed, it allows you to run on water while sprint is active. Glyph of Decoy, when you vanish you leave a copy of yourself. The only one that really can matter at all is Glyph of Killing Spree. Your Killing Spree returns you to your starting location when the effect ends. Basically, when you start Killing Spree, you come back to the same exact spot at the end. So instead of being possibly random, you'll come back to the same spot. There are issues with this though. If you Killing Spreed and then something came down on the ground where you started your Killing Spree, you would end up going back into it and possibly dying. So I usually go with Glyph of Cloak of Shadows, Glyph of Sprint, and Glyph of Redirect. Any of them are viable. I would always pick Glyph of Redirect, but it's really up to your taste what else you want to use. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of macros, and then we'll move ahead and start hitting the target dummy and doing some damage. So, I really only use 3 in combat. That's going to be my Tricks of the Trade macro. It will Tricks of the Trade my focus target, and also Whisper them, letting them know that they had increased damage. I have Killing Spree. It's just Killing Spree macro together with Synapse Springs because I'm an engineer. And then I also have Adrenaline Rush macro together with Shadow Blades and Synapse Springs. Adrenaline Rush and Shadow Blades are both on 3-minute cooldowns, and they both off global cooldowns, so you can use them together every single time. And what that means is you basically have one super cooldown that does everything. So what Adrenaline Rush does is increases your energy regen by 100%, your melee attack speed by 20%, and also reduces the global cooldown of some of your main abilities. What Shadow Blades does is makes it so you're doing pure shadow damage, and you're also generating 1 more combo point per ability that you use of your main abilities. So you can imagine that you're gaining combo points and spending them at such a fast rate that you're doing just ridiculous damage. It just becomes a super cooldown. But what also is amazing about it is every time you use a combo point finisher, you're reducing the cooldown of your next Shadow Blades and Adrenaline Rush, and even Killing Spree, because of the way that Restless Blades works. Every one combo point that you spend, you reduce your cooldowns by 2 seconds. So every 5 is 10 seconds, and so on. So using Adrenaline Rush and Shadow Blades together means that you can use them together again faster because of how quick you're gaining combo points and spending them. Those are going to be our main macros. I do have a couple of other ones just for challenge modes. My challenge mode Roar here. And that's pretty much it. And then now we're going to go ahead and take a look at doing some damage on the target dummy and our rotation. Now we're on to the priority system. We want to make sure we always have our paralytic poison and our deadly poison applied before we pull. And before we get into the actual priority, I want to just talk about Bandit's Guile. Bandit's Guile is a DPS increase buff that we get from using Sinister Strike or Revealing Strike. Every 4th one of those abilities that you use will increase your Bandit's Guile, basically ranking. You start from none, you move up to green, which is 10% increased damage, into yellow, which is 20% increased damage, and finally into red, which is 30% increased damage. At that point, you can't go any higher, and it will just time out, and you'll start over at 0% increased damage. So now that we have that, let's move on to the actual priority. You want to make sure you always have Slice and Dice up, preferably using 5 combo points. 1, so that you don't have to apply it again for a long time, but 2, because you want to make sure that Ruthlessness refunds you one of the combo points that you just used. Then you want to have Revealing Strike up on the target before you use any of your finishers or Sinister Strike, because if you use Sinister Strike with Revealing Strike on the target, you have a chance to gain a 2nd combo point. Also, it increases the damage done or effectiveness of your combo point finishers, so you'll do more damage with your Eviscerates and Ruptures, and you'll have longer kidney shots. After you have those applied, the next step would be to have a Rupture applied. Now, you want to make sure that you always use 5 combo points on Rupture. It's a bleed, but it's a marginal DPS increase over just using Eviscerate. So if you're having issues keeping it up on the target, just make sure you're using Eviscerate then. Also, with so many fights with multiple targets and Blade Flurry not transferring your Rupture to multiple targets, it may be better just for you to use Eviscerate all the time. After you have all that up, you just want to use Sinister Strike to gain combo points and Eviscerate to spend them. So before the pull, you want to make sure, like I said, you have your poisons on. 3 seconds on the timer, you want to use your Tricks of the Trade macro, so that you tricks the other rogue and they tricks you back. Then you want to, at 2 seconds left, use your Vermin's Bite. Go into Stealth, Shadow Step, Ambush, Revealing Strike, Slice and Dice, Killing Spree. Then you want to pop your Shadow Blades and Adrenaline Rush macro and start doing damage. You want to make sure that you never go past 7 combo points while pressing Sinister Strike, because at 9 combo points, that's pretty much your max. If you go to 10, then you're not getting that bonus combo point from using your Ruthlessness. Now you just want to continue this rotation until your Killing Spree is back up. You use Killing Spree on cooldown. Once your Killing Spree is over, I generally use Vanish into an Ambush, and then continue doing my DPS until my other cooldowns are back up. And then it's basically just that. When you're on multiple targets, you just want to do the same thing, turn Blade Flurry on. You can see how much damage you can do with just Blade Flurry and your other cooldowns. And that's basically it. Just make sure that you don't let your Slice and Dice fall off. At this point, since it is 2 targets, you want to make sure you're always using Eviscerate. And there, my Killing Spree just came up, so we're just going to go ahead and use that. And just continue doing this over and over. At some point, you're going to want to use your Preparation, Vanish, and Ambush again. And at another point, preferably when you have Bloodlust and some other cooldowns up, you want to use your second Vermin's Bite. That's pretty much it for the single target and multi-target. for your AoE rotation, you're generally going to be okay with just using Blade Flurry, but that does only hit an additional 4 targets, so if you're past about 6, 7, 8 targets, you want to go up and make sure you're using your Fan of Knives, get your Slice and Dice up, and then use Fan of Knives to get up to 5 combo points, and use Crimson Tempest. And you just want to make sure that you maintain these buffs the whole time while spamming Fan of Knives, and you can also use Eviscerate in there if you need to, but that's basically it. Mainly you're just going to be using Blade Flurry because that's what the encounters in Siege of Weakaura require you to use. For add-ons, I generally like to keep my UI pretty simple and clean and centered around my character, so I can make sure that I'm not standing in anything and not dying to fire. The add-ons I like to use are DBM for its boss timers, LVUI for its general UI, Skada for damage and healing meters, Bartender for bars, Bandit's Guile Helper just to show me how many hits I need to use to get to the next Bandit's Guile, and then finally I use Weakaura to track all of my CDs and uptime on my spells, which I'll show in this next part coming up. Alright, bringing up my Weakauras, you can see I have a lot of them. I use them for a lot of different reasons. So right here underneath my actual bar is a cooldown bar. It has all of my cooldowns from Sprint, the whole way to Evasion, Shadow Dance, that's for Subtlety. We have my Tricks of the Trade, Killing Spree, Shadow Blades, Adrenaline Rush, Vanish. Then we have my abilities, so we have Revealing Strikes debuff on the target, my Slice and Dice, my Recuperate. This is my Assurance of Consequence, Trinket, proc, Vermin's Bite, duration, Cloak of Shadows duration. There is Blade Flurry. There's Rupture over here, and underneath of that is Garrett for my Subtlety spec. Then this is the timer or duration for Bandit's Guile. Underneath of there's the other 2 colors as well. There's Evasion's duration. These are Siege of Weakaura debuffs or buffs. This is Gift of the Titans, that one is a buff. Then I have my Heroism or Time Warp for this, and Storm Lash right here. These are my basic ones. I do have a whole bunch of other ones as well for multiple classes. My Shaman has probably double the amount I have on this guy. But this gives me a general, everything centered around my character. I can see everything. We have the energy bar, we have my combo points, and then above them we have my anticipation charges, which are basically, it just kind of shows me as 10 combo points. I really like that. I don't ever really have to look around, look down to see anything like that. And that's pretty much it for my add-ons. This last part I just wanted to share a few tips and tricks that I've learned from playing Rogue. So number 1, if you're having issues dying during Killing Spree, try using Cloak of Shadows beforehand, because a lot of times what kills you is magic damage and this will prevent you from dying. Number 2, listen to your healers or raid leader for timing of your Smoke Bomb. Smoke Bomb is a huge damage reduction cooldown for the raid and it's uncapped, so as long as everyone can jump inside, you're really reducing the damage that everyone's taking. Number 3, if you're with another rogue, make sure you're both using tricks on cooldown on each other for the extra damage bonus. You do lose a little bit of damage from using tricks because of the 15 energy cost, but you gain so much more from receiving it. Number 4, make sure you aren't wasting your kick, but if you do, you may be able to 1 combo point kidney shot if it's like an add-on Galacras or General Nazgrim. Number 5, if you have about 10 seconds or maybe a little bit more or less on Killing Spree's cooldown when Adrenaline Rush and Shadow Blades come up, just wait and use another combo point finisher and get that Killing Spree out before you use your Adrenaline Rush and Shadow Blades. That effectively gives you another free Killing Spree because it will reset. Thanks for watching my video guide. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video. If you have any interest in me doing guides for any other classes or specs, please leave that in the comment section also, or any other activities like Proving Grounds or Challenge Modes. With that, I'll leave you with some target dummy DPS. Thanks guys, have a good one.